Welcome back to Square Off. The news seemed to come out of nowhere. The city of Tempe was looking at renaming several parks, streets, and schools. The reason? Researchers discovered they were named for men who were members of a local Ku Klux Klan chapter a century ago in the 1920s. Late last week, the city council moved ahead with the renaming plans. But one question nagged at me. Why was all this coming to light 100 years later? With some help, I found the person who had the answer. Tempe resident Drew Sullivan began digging into the white supremacist group's presence about 10 years ago, and he kept going. Drew Sullivan joins us to tell the story. Welcome to Square Off.
Hi, thanks, Brahm.
So Tempe was home to the Butte chapter of the Klan in the 1920s. Two things come to mind when we think of the Klan: cross burnings and lynching. What was the Tempe chapter's mission?
Well, the Klan of the 1920s was, in a lot of ways, I mean, while they were a white supremacist organization, they were also really concerned with morality. And for the Klan, that was a very Protestant vision, very religious vision of morality. And so the Tempe Klan, like the Phoenix Klan and the Mesa and Glendale Klan, were an organization that was anti-Catholic, anti-Mormon, anti-Jewish. They were very much concerned with a singular kind of religious vision of morality in the Southwest and in Arizona.
Did you see, based on your research, the kind of violence that the Klan was known for elsewhere?
Yeah, it may not have been quite on the scale of the Klan revival in other places, but there were documented incidents of a number of acts of violence and attempted lynchings of Black residents of Maricopa County. There was a incident where a Mormon school principal was attacked, a white Mormon school principal in Mesa, and that was an act of violence that led to a sort of reckoning with law enforcement, in which some Klan members, presumed Klan members at the time, were brought up on charges, and that sort of led to the unraveling of the Klan as they were really ascendant in the Phoenix area in around 1922.
So let's go back to the beginning of your involvement. You're not a historian by training. You're somebody with an interest in the topic. You did a lot of digging, as I said earlier. What turned you on to this subject?
I have been like a part-time college student for a few years, and around 2011, I took a history class at Maricopa Community College in Arizona history, and as a result, I would find anywhere I could copies of the Journal of Arizona History just to read sort of recreationally. And I also, there was a series that was coming out around the same time, published in Orange County, about the pioneer families of Anaheim that were Klan members. And so I started thinking, I wonder if there's, a similar trajectory of the Klan in Phoenix. And so I did some digging, and sure enough, and I'm holding this copy of the Journal of Arizona History from 1973. There's an article in here written by a grad student from ASU, in which she kind of outlines a brief history of the Klan from around 1921 to 1923 in what was then known as the Salt River Valley. And so I'm a real bibliography hound, and so from there I kind of start looking at secondary and primary sources and started trying to kind of sniff it out, and finding some other major academic works that were written by ASU students. And that led me to primary sources like the McClintock papers at Burton Barr Library. And I just went down there on my own time and did some research, and put some information together that I'd gathered, and saw that, there was a list of Tempe Klan leaders that had been leaked to Colonel McClintock, as well as to a local journalist at that time. And the list included some of the really high profile names, including one that really stood out to me, which was Hugh Laird, because of the Laird family's sort of prominence in named places in Tempe.
So I just want to pause there for a second. So you've hit on a few things. So this history wasn't hidden. It was there if you went looking for it. And then there's the role of people who live in Tempe and in the area will know the McClintock Drive. I used to live right off it. You mentioned Colonel James McClintock. He's a central figure in bringing some of this to light. Explain that.
Yeah, so when I mentioned earlier there was the attack on the principal in Mesa, that led to a grand jury investigation of the Klan, and Colonel McClintock was the jury foreman. He was also pretty well placed because information was being fed to him through contacts he had in the Los Angeles area. And that's significant because a traveling Klan organizer had been raided in the Los Angeles area, and the Los Angeles County Attorney held the membership roster for the Western States Klan membership. And included in there was the Tempe and Phoenix Klan, and those were the two local clans that had their memberships leaked both to Colonel McClintock and to this local paper. The result of that was there was a separate investigation opened by that grand jury in which they subpoenaed 20 Phoenix prominent residents who were named in the list. 18 of the 20, I believe, showed up for their subpoena, and the grand jury had determined that 18 of the 20, the 18 who came, were Klan members based off interviews and other information. And so the lists that were leaked to Colonel McClintock and to the press were legitimate pieces of information.
And so these weren't just guys. In Tempe, at least, there are many prominent members of the community on that list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was, really, the Tempe one really pales in comparison to the Phoenix one, because in the Phoenix list, it was the Maricopa County Attorney, the Maricopa County Sheriff, the Secretary of State, a number of prominent businessmen and civic leaders, and that fell in line with the Klan strategy of that time, which was to recruit through the cover of organizations like the Rotary Club and business organizations like the Merchants and Manufacturers Association.
So you helped bring this forward. There were others involved. Neither you nor I are claiming that you did the entirety of this work. Tempe Historical Society did a lot of research and ultimately produced a report for the Tempe City Council. People were shocked by this. They just had never heard this history, and that includes the relatives of many of the men named, whose names are on schools and streets and parks in Tempe. And one relative said at a hearing last week, quote, "A piece of paper 100 years old is flimsy evidence." What would you say to that man?
Well, I would say, it took 50 years for there to be major writings about this era of the Klan produced. And part of the reason why is it took a lot of the participants of the Klan of the 1920s passing away and dying before there was this evidence that started to be produced as to their involvement. And if you look at, in the case of Phoenix, this, what I've referenced, these writings that came out of ASU, that's 50 years ago. So it's been 50 years since these, students and researchers started looking at the Klan in Maricopa County. And it's taken another 50 years for that information to kind of trickle up to the corridors of power, where at this moment, there are some people who are listening and are, concerned about this past. As far as what the Tempe Historical Society has managed to collect, some of the names that were in there I've never seen before. And part of the reason why is that I believe the Klan, and I don't believe this, I can cite this, but the Klan in Tempe lasted longer than that trial. That trial that Colonel McClintock was involved in was in 1922, but the Klan in Tempe was active through 1925. And so it's very likely that there were other residents of Tempe who did join the Klan. And what the Tempe Historical Society has unearthed, and they need to produce the documentation and they need to contextualize it so that these family members can see what these documents are. But if it is as it sounds, and it does sound as though it could be accurate, credible documentation, this is like the biggest discovery of the Tempe Klan since the research of these students 50 years ago.
All right, we got to end it there. Juice Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you.